Chapter 23, Schooled by Gordon Corman. Chapter 23, name, Mr. Cassidy. The conference could not possibly have gone better. I was congratulated by so many people that it was almost embarrassing. My own district superintendent confided that the principalship of North High would be opening up in a couple of years and the job was mine for the asking. I felt fantastic. Why wouldn't I? I returned to Claveridge flushed with victory. I had no way of knowing that the key word in that sentence was going to be flushed. I expected a huge pile of mail and a lot of phone messages and emails, but as I sifted through the papers and envelopes on my desk, a familiar logo of the Consolidated Savings Bank kept turning up. I think it's cap spending. I opened the one marked urgent and unfolded the computer-generated page inside. Dear customer, we are returning this check to you because your account is overdrawn and the transaction cannot be honored. A service fee of $30 has been charged to your account. Stapled to the page was a Claveridge Middle School check with insufficient funds stamped across it in red. It was made out to the American Cancer Society in the amount of $500. My own signature appeared on one of the lines, and on the second was written Capricorn Anderson. My office tilted, and I clung to the arms of my chair for fear of winding up on the carpet. This was one of those checks I'd given Anderson. Why was he donating $500 to the American Cancer Society? Not that that wasn't worth the cause, but this money was supposed to pay for the Halloween dance. Hands shaking, I opened a few more envelopes. They were all the same. The March of Dimes, Habitat for Humanity, Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, all for hundreds. An icy feeling spread northward from the base of my spine. If these checks were bouncing, it meant the money in the Student Activities Fund was gone. There had been $4,000 in that account. I waded into the mountain of mail with both hands, tossing envelopes in all directions until I came across the bank statement. On it, the whole terrible story was laid out for me in detail. There were checks that I had countersigned, the ones that had bounced, the ones that hadn't. A bounce check, grade 5s, is when you write a check. There's one right here. And you can't, you don't have the money in the bank to pay for that. So the check is written, but you don't have the money. Like if it was $20 on the check and you paid that to someone or a company, and when they sent the check in to cash the check, they won't be able to get money out of your bank account. So it's called a bounce check. Sorry, now I lost my spot. I do this all the time. You know that. I saw the deposits for food and music and the one or two other expenses that probably had to do with the dance. The rest were made out to charities. One to the March of Caring for $1,000. What's going on here? I buzzed my secretary. Get Capricorn Anderson down to my office immediately. Capricorn Anderson is no longer a registered student here. I nearly inhaled my tie. Since when? He left the school last Wednesday, came the reply. His grandmother was released from the hospital. Get her on the phone. There was a brief pause. It says here they don't have a phone. I did the only thing I could think of. I called Flora Donnelly. I left messages at her home office cell number. I must have sounded pretty desperate because she turned up within an hour. By that time, I'd already spoken to my bank manager with a very unfriendly assistant to the DJ, who accused me of hanging rubber paper off of my man, whatever that meant. I turned beseeching eyes to the social worker. This is your case, Flora. I know you've a special connection to that kid. Can you shine any light on this for me? She examined the evidence, the bank statements and bounce checks. Her face was sickly shades of gray. She looked at it. She looked like I felt. Then she said something I didn't expect. Frank, this is all your fault. My fault? What possessed you to give him a signed check? Or signed checks? I was going out of town, I defended myself. I didn't want him to be caught short. Besides, we always give kids the responsibility with student activity fund. They're teenagers. They're supposed to be able to handle it. I warned you that Cap Anderson is a boy who may as well have been raised on another planet. Okay, I admitted. I noticed he wasn't exactly streetwise, but that didn't stop him from committing fraud. He's no more capable of fraud than flying, he said flatly. It's right here in black and white, I insisted. He found a way to take the school's money and make it look like he donated it to charity. I've got no choice but to call the police. She was suddenly patient. Then, when you gave him those checks, did you explain to him what a check is and how it works? Of course, I'm not a fool. No, she said. I mean exactly how it works. That the amount of the check is deducted from the balance of the account and that the money can run out. Everybody knows you can't spend more than you have. Frank, I never told you this. I lived on Garland Farm until I was 12. When my family moved, I had never handled money, not even a penny. Money was the key to everything that was wrong with the world, and the leaders of the community kept any kind of financial dealings completely hidden from us kids. I guarantee that Cap had no idea that anyone had to pay for the checks he was writing, and the power to write them must have seemed almost magical. Once he realized that he could use that power to help people, there was no limit to how much he would try to give away. I was thunderstruck. Are you telling me that he really did take an entire student activity fund and donate it to charity? She nodded. He's got all the idealism of the 60s with none of the reality checks. He's not a criminal. He's an exact opposite, totally innocent in every sense of the word. I held my head. It would have been easier if he'd robbed the school at gunpoint and taken off for a Mexican border. That I would have explained to the board, and insurance would have covered it. What am I going to do? Call the March of Dimes and demand my money back? You could try, she suggested reasonably. It can't be the first time an unauthorized person has misspent money. Yeah, to buy a plasma TV, not to donate to a charity. Her face betrayed a ghost of a smile. Don't worry. At Garland, there's nowhere to plug in a plasma TV. Here's a charge that doesn't look very charitable, I muttered, still studying the bank statement. It's to a jewelry store on Main Street. She looked over my shoulder. I'm sure there's some explanation. Prizes probably. Best dancer, best rap, most outrageous outfit, that kind of thing. I nodded numbly. That was the moment that I realized there would be no dancing prizes because there would be no dance. It would be a popular decision, but a popular decision, but I saw now that this was the only way. Sure, I could fight with the bank or plead with the charities, but it would just make me look like a fool. Or I could drive out to this Garland place and demand that the grandmother replace the funds Cap frittered away. Still, who knew if they had any money at all? They were living an alternative lifestyle 40 years after the rest of the world had given it up. The local papers would have a field day reporting that while I was running the principals conference in Las Vegas, my trusted 8th grade president was emptying my treasury, their bank account. The job at North High was not going to be offered to a court jester. Who's a court jester? They're like the clown, the person that entertains. No, I had to cancel the dance, recoup what I could, and eat the rest. Flora Donnelly was right. This was my fault, but not for her reasons. I had long suspected how the kids went about picking their 8th grade president, and when I chose to look the other way, I was sort of putting a stamp of approval on it, but I always knew that one day it would blow up in their faces. I just never thought it would blow up in mine.